Well, good morning and welcome to Gisborough Christian Fellowship. Today we are completing our work from the study guide, The Complete Christian, with the title Apostle of the Worldwide Christ. And we are dealing with Colossians 1, chapter 1, verses 3 to 14, and then continuing from verse 21 to chapter 2, verse 5. This is completion of the series that we actually started back in November last year. And it continues. I like a phrase that Bill picked out last week, which is excavate. It's good to excavate the world of Christ, the word of Christ. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to look into God's word and understand what Paul's actions as an apostle might mean for us, how his actions apply to us today. Next week, we are entering a new series. We are going to be focusing on Jesus through the Gospels, and we're going to go to, with the objective of helping us look at Jesus, keep our eyes fixed on Jesus and the things that Jesus said that apply to us, which inevitably leads to us considering how we share the good news with others, because the love of Jesus is the love for all. But that's for next week, not for now. So, what we want to look at this morning is start off by looking at what I learned really from this series. I think it's a bit of a presumption that I assume that other people learn the same things. I think it's important to look back and see what we have gained from the series over the past couple of months. Continuing the Christian life is as important as starting. I was quite struck by rereading Matthew 28. Go make disciples of all people, says Jesus, and then teach them. Yeah? And that was a command, not a suggestion. Go make disciples and then teach them. So start them and continue. Jesus is really Lord of all, everything on heaven and earth. Jesus is the best photograph God has taken of himself, the best selfie, Bill said. I like that. All the fullness of God is in Christ. All creation, all love, all redemption, everything on earth and heaven is in Christ. He is the cosmic Christ, as Angus and Annie told us. He holds all things together. God has given us everything we need. We must simply rely on it. And we were speaking of actually needing some reminders of the basics of our faith, understanding why and what we believe. But we can only put our sinful nature off only because of what Jesus has done, which is what God has given us. He has forgiven us all our sins. And Paul said, Jesus gives us a level playing field. There are no special people. There's no special knowledge. We should accept one another as Christ accepted us. Have the same attitude of mind towards each other that Jesus Christ had, says Paul in Romans 15:7. Accept one another then, as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. And that was reference to Jews and Gentiles. A level playing field. Do not add to Christ, but do not take away. He is supreme. I have an equation for you. It's amazing how things jump out at you when you're looking at, quite deliberately, looking at things at YouTube, and it's offering you all these things that it thinks you want, which you really don't. But I saw a title here, and it said, here's a nice equation. It says, Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. What a great equation. Do not add to Christ, but do not take away. And we need to shun hollow and deceptive philosophy. We need real understanding. Do not be deceived by fine argument. It amazes me how many supposedly strong and powerful and well-informed people are easily led astray. sometimes more easily than others. Sometimes they seem to forget common sense. We need to shun hollow and deceptive philosophy. And everything is to be done so we are filled with the knowledge of his will. I was reading one of the commentaries and he made the point that nobody ever said, I think it's God's will for me to be a street cleaner, or I think it's God's will for me to be a hospital cleaner or a handyman. Sometimes we're very good at rationalising that what we're doing that rather suits us, we rather think might suit God as well. And what Paul is saying to us is, we need to make sure that we are focusing on gaining a knowledge of his will. So back to the start, we started talking about Colossae and the location of Colossae in what was then Asia Minor and is now known as Turkey, southern Turkey. And, well, what's the background? Paul is an apostle. He's sent by Christ by the will of God. Now, apostle is a word that's thrown around quite a bit, and it means, in Greek, apostolos, apparently, it means a person sent. And very interesting, Paul was sent by Christ. And as soon as he'd had his encounter with Christ and the scales fell from his eyes, Paul was straight in the saddle. At once, he began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. At once, no delay. And it was so sudden, people were suspicious, not unsurprisingly. Paul was not a nice man. And it wasn't exactly falling off a log for him either. First thing that happened is the Jews tried to kill him. So he ran away to Jerusalem. And of course the disciples were afraid of him. So he was sent by Christ. We are all sent by Christ. Matthew 28:18, the Great Commission as it's often called. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. Slight paraphrase there. But all authority is given to Christ. But we're not required to do it by ourselves. The next point, the next thing that Jesus says, the next verse, which finishes off Matthew, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. What could be more reassuring than that? And it led me to think, and I want to look at the spread of the gospel in a moment, but maybe the most important missionary journeys, if we are sent as apostles, maybe the most important missionary journeys that are left to do are short ones. Less than 1 mile. When God looks at his map and he sees his people spread all over the world, and they are spread all over the world, no unbeliever is ever very far from a Christian, are they? And he must be scratching his head and saying, why don't they talk? Maybe our mission, for most of us and most of the time, is very close to the situation we're in. The gospel spread was no accident. It was spread throughout the world by people like Paul. And I think that took some fairly determined efforts. Paul was a great traveller, had been all his life. But we are not Paul, we are who we are. So let's look at the spread. So these got 3 maps for you here. The first one, this is AD 250. So this is 220 years after the death and resurrection of Christ. And you can see how Western Turkey, northern Syria, those areas have expanded. But there's also Rome, there's also parts in France, and also in southern Spain and on the north coast of Africa. And interestingly in Egypt as well. And then as the years progress, see the spread throughout the Roman Empire. Yeah, also to Western India, which I found fascinating. And then further on, it spread, and we've got here a list of 10 of the major cities in Christianity. I thought it's interesting, always interesting looking at these maps and seeing how many of these places you know. London, yes. Trier, yes. Lyon, yes. I'm not sure I know any of the others apart from Nicaea from the point of view of the Cree. And here's one that I can hardly say, to Typhon. And that's actually, it's near Baghdad. And this is a ruin that is there, really quite a significant ruin. And being an engineer, couldn't resist it. This archway is considered a landmark in the history of architecture. It's the largest single-span vault of unreinforced brickwork in the world. That's not bad for the 3rd century, is it? 3rd century AD. And things carried on, and we've had empires, and we've had colonies, and all kinds of things that have gone, and some have been done in ways that we look back now and regret. But Christianity has spread throughout the world. Let's not forget the worldwide map. Slight diversion. Where is this? I wonder if you know where this is. Well, actually, it's referred to often as the most bombed hotel in the world. This is a giveaway, really. It was bombed 36 times during the Troubles, and it used to be nicknamed the Hardboard Hotel. So much of its glass was missing and replaced with hardboard. And it was also used during the Good Friday Agreement to house the Clintons when they visited Belfast. Just think about that for a while. We'll come back to it. About the options, about how they survived through those periods. So let's go back to the passage. Paul majors on thanksgiving and prayer. And he gives a model for praying, which I'm not going to read to you. But in verse 12, gives an order, talking about understanding God's will, gaining spiritual wisdom, etc. But the bit that really struck me about this is in verse 5, and saying how faith and love spring from the hope you have in heaven. Elsewhere it says, do not move from the hope held out in the gospel. We are to live in hope. We are to have hope. Everything else springs from our hope. And this is really a place where he puts the gospel. And he talks about being reconciled by Christ's physical death. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He's got a little potted gospel here in the middle of this passage. And Paul is continuing to strive for the Colossians and Laodiceans. My goal is that they might be encouraged in heart and united in love. I thought that was nice. Encouraged in heart and united in love. So that no one may deceive you by fine-sounding arguments. He's always very purposeful, is Paul. I thought it might be good to just think about what sort of a preacher Paul was. And here we have the earliest picture of Paul that's known about. Dates from the 4th century, discovered in 2009 in Rome. Bit of a passport photo, doesn't tell you much. But Paul was a suffering preacher, wasn't he? I now rejoice in what I am suffering for you. He was a hard-working preacher. He talks about being a servant. He's used to preaching in all kinds of different places. Upstairs rooms, people's houses, in synagogues, in the square. He really didn't seem to mind where he was. And he was a travelling preacher. Did a lot of travelling, as we know. He was also, I believe, a concerned preacher, because a lot of his writings were obviously for churches that were far away. And he also had authority, but used it, I think, reasonably lightly. He used his letters well. If they'd been strict, simple instructions, do this, don't do that, here's a list of what have you, I doubt whether they would have lasted. And he was a delighted preacher. I'm delighted to see how disciplined you are, he says. We all need encouragement, don't we? And he did that. And the whole of Colossians, he lays out a number of principles. Not just these, but are these ones that struck me. We must continue. We must never give up. The knowledge of Christ is for sharing. God wants us to have an understanding of his will for us. And I think evangelism is work in terms of it has specific purposes and actions. As we said before, Paul's been commissioned by Christ. So has we. Jesus and Paul made it very clear that his disciples would suffer. But this is all because so that we can present everyone fully mature in Christ. So what does this mean for us? Well, we need to know how to live, don't we? And prayer is probably the main tool we have for doing that. And I challenge myself, how much time do I spend in the comfort zone? How much time do I spend in the comfort zone rather than exploring or considering or doing other things? We need to have a real understanding and recall of God's word. God's word is a two-edged sword, as reminded. All scripture is given to us and suitable for teaching, says Timothy, and rebuking, also says Timothy. Always be ready to give a defence with gentleness and respect. And we should be teaching. We should be teaching ourselves. We should be teaching others. I think it's very important to remember that learning is part of life. Everybody learns all the time. Giving up on learning is giving up on life. We should be teaching ourselves. We should be teaching others. Christ is over all things, over all the inhabitants of the world, and that includes us. The fruits are given to many. Yeah, fruits are not just for us. They're not monopolized by us. Look at the success of churches in other parts of the world. Look at how Paul calls Epaphras, dear fellow servant, sharing the work with him. This is absolutely about us and not me. Us in the broadest sense, in terms of the fruits of evangelism. So what action should we take? I have a question for you. How good is your hope? How is your hope this morning? And the supplementary question, similar to what we said about learning. Are you working on it? Paul has a positive assurance about heaven, doesn't he? So should I. So should we. And good news is not just for our information, it's for transformation of others. Ask yourself, how is the gospel reaching others through my life? In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven, says Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Christ is not hidden if you come to him. And Christian love is active. It's not for storage or holding hostage. I liked the thing that Bill read out. A vibrant, strong and committed community is inherently evangelistic. But it must demonstrate clear belief, identity and purpose. That's us, isn't it? That's how we are, how we need to be. We need to be active. We should be living in the present. And we must depend only on God's grace. And that takes humility. Finally, I think churches should be encouraging other churches. So what's my summary for today in closing? Well, continuing is as important as starting. We've learned that from Colossians. But starting is also important. How can outsiders start unless they have been reached? We have the Europa Hotel in Belfast. Well, I think, like GCF, they have three choices. They can give up, give in to the bombing. You can put up loads of boarding and hunker down, but out of sight, hope nobody notices you. Or you can keep going, full speed ahead. The Bible encourages in the third. aspect. We should not weary of doing good, it says in Galatians. Churchill said, never give up, never, 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 and never yield to force or the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. Gosh, does that ring a bell today? Somebody put it. Let Jesus change the world. It's full steam ahead, all guys. Amen.